Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are having a pretty global meetup today. My name is Keegan Cotton. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Guesty for our Americas region and our APAC region. Joining us today are two speakers that were kind enough to give us some time out of their busy schedules. With us, we have Tom Williams, a learning specialist at AirDNA, who's responsible for creating, managing, and developing the AirDNA Academy, a resource to build knowledge and leverage the tools in the short-term rental sector to help managers grow their business. And alongside him is Dave Roy, the head of biz dev at Duve, who leads the business development efforts for Duve. If you're not familiar with Duve's functionality, they are a marketplace partner of Guesty in the kind of guest-facing app space, allowing for some additional services to be upsold to guests, along with some other features that he'll be sharing with us today. As a quick overview for how this webinar is going to be structured, I'll begin by sharing some Guesty insights that will kind of frame our conversation overall, and then invite our panelists to share their topics for elevating rental visibility. So as a kind of teaser for you, Tom's going to be covering some recent trends in data as it pertains to occupancy, RevPal, et cetera, to really get a clean look at the data of where are we projected as we're going into Q3, how are things looking? And Dave's going to give us some suggestions from the technology front of some tools and automations that can be utilized to really strengthen your brand and online presence. Then lastly, we'll go ahead into the actual panel discussion where we'll run through some pre-written questions as well as some questions that come from you in the audience. And before we dive into that kind of intro data that I mentioned, I want to take a minute to introduce Guesty to those of you who are not yet familiar with what we do, since this is a joint meetup. As a quick rundown, at Guesty, we aim to provide short-term rental hosts and property management companies with the tools they need to operate more efficiently, bring in more bookings, and ultimately grow their business. We've got 15 offices worldwide. We are a global company. We're working with customers in over 80 countries. We've been around for almost 10 years now, which is great. And we have over 280 million in funding and counting, hopefully. We'll see. So in order to bring these services to our customers, we actually have two unique offerings as of today. We have Guesty for Pros and Guesty for Hosts. So throughout this presentation today, if you are a user, just keep in mind there is a difference between those two platforms. Each of these platforms is tailored to two different types of rental managers who work with properties ranging from personally owned vacation rentals with Guesty for Hosts, all the way up to enterprise property management companies and beyond who are more in the Guesty for Pros sector. Both platforms are powered by our 200 plus R&D team, 200 plus membered R&D team, ensuring all of our users are provided with the most innovative and cutting edge solutions available on the market. So no matter how many properties you manage or what your goals are, whether you're Guesty for Hosts, whether you're Guesty for Pros, with Guesty, we have a solution that's suited for you specifically. All right, so let's get on to the good stuff, the reason we're here, the meat of the topic today, which is elevating our rental visibility. So I want to start with the basics today. Elevating rental visibility starts with building a strong online presence, making sure that your brand is known and you are able to be driving regular leads to your own system to really benefit from the internet, more or less, outside of these OTAs. So an effective marketing strategy is made up of several key components when it comes to an online presence. A direct booking website where you're actually able to funnel any leads that you're gathering. And then there's strategies for how you're gathering these leads, whether that be email marketing, paid campaigns like Google AdWords, social media, or organic leads that are built from fostering SEO growth on your website, which will actually allow you to rank higher than these OTAs in certain cases. For example, if someone's searching vacation rental Gatlinburg and you have a well-established SEO website with properties in Gatlinburg, you're likely to rank above these OTAs since they have properties all over. They're less specific in getting Gatlinburg as the actual result that comes through. So to kind of dive into this a little bit more, talking about this direct booking website, I want to go over, this is kind of the heart of your marketing strategy. Like I mentioned, everything else is our strategies to funnel into that direct booking website. So when you create and maintain a direct booking site, you have complete control and ownership over your brand's narrative. Your story is not limited in your listings descriptions, but can be told fully in whatever medium you like. You're not within the confines that you might be within an OTA. You can easily create a professional direct booking website either on your own or by using Guesty's websites tool, which allows you to define and establish your brand, taking advantage of your unique look, feel, and voice to attract more guests, build credibility, and increase those direct reservations. You can save on booking channel commissions and promote upsells because you're not a channel. So you don't owe money to Airbnb or Booking.com or Vrbo. These are your reservations, and therefore there isn't a channel commission component. You can use, like I was talking about, that search engine optimization or SEO and Google Analytics capability to drive organic traffic and ensure that these leads that you are funneling into your website are actually converting. You can get that really detailed visibility into seeing what is a prospective guest doing once they actually do land on my website. And then lastly, collect and own rich data about your guests in order to build personalized experiences and tailor your marketing materials. This can be anything from as simple as collecting someone's birthday to understanding their allergies, their background, anything that might help you come up with a more dedicated, personalized experience. It's great to collect as much data as possible in that regard. All right. As a really quick overview of email marketing, I want to talk about the benefits of email marketing overall. In 2022, there are around 4 million daily users, with this expected to be 4.6 billion users in 2025. 64% of small businesses are already using email marketing for their key marketing strategy, which means it's very well used and very successful, but also it means a lot of people are doing it. So it's important to be sure that you're doing email marketing well. So when this is done well, it will increase your audience's connection with your brand, maximize visibility, and ultimately boost your revenue. To give an example of, okay, how do I do all this? How do I build email marketing well? How do I build out social media posts? How do I build out these ad campaigns that are going to be compelling and drive conversions to my website? I don't have a full content team. I don't have the budget to go out and hire freelance writers to create content like this for me. This is an area where technology can come in and help. In particular, AI technology. AI is a buzzword that's been obviously very hot this year. I think Dave's going to go a little more into that specifically, but I wanted to give an example on the screen to show how AI can actually be used in real life examples to help your business. So looking at examples of automating replies to booking inquiries, enhancing listing descriptions with review-inspired copy, using tools like ChatGPT or Copy.ai, creating engaging and SEO-friendly content for your website, and developing social media content. Sometimes I would say, hey, that's a lot easier said than done, right? I'm just saying develop a social media content calendar, but really with tools like ChatGPT, it can be that easy at times. You'll see on the right-hand side here an example of how these tools can be used, where someone will literally come and say, hey, can you create engaging SEO-driven copy that talks about vacation rentals? Here are some facts that you need to know about the vacation rentals. And those tools will spit out the description ready to go. On the right-hand side here, you can see an example where someone said, hey, can I get a social media calendar? And it built out automatically not only the content that you're going to be posting, but the dates that it's recommending you to post them as well. So there's a lot of automation and AI tooling that can help with these kind of weightier lifts that you know are going to be good for you in the long run, but just can't seem to find the time to devote. This is where AI and other tools can really come in to make a difference. Which brings us to our first poll of the day, which I want to ask everyone before we head over to our first speaker. I wanted to get an idea from our audience of how many of you today are currently using AI in your business. So this can be for literally anything. It's just getting a sense of, have you started experimenting? Have you implemented? Or are you really just kind of here to learn? You haven't had the time to really experiment on your own and are eager to hear some suggestions. I'll go ahead and let this go for, say, another 10 or 15 seconds here. It's actually looking pretty even, pretty split down the middle, which is good. Which is very, very good, because this is kind of showing us where we're at on this early adoption curve for AI tooling. Awesome. Okay, so looks like we're pretty clear cut down the middle, 46 to 54 of 150 participants that answered. So with that in mind, for that 50% that says, yes, I am using AI tooling as of today, I want to ask, and if you aren't today, you can go ahead and ignore this poll. Don't worry about it. But for those of you that indicated that you are using AI, what are you using these tools for? Are you using this to increase your visibility online, to create website content, enhance listing descriptions, automate replies to booking inquiries? If you're doing multiple of these, that's okay. I would just go ahead and select there's multiple choice, so you can select multiple answers. As the results are looking in, it's looking like the highest task that we're seeing AI adoption for is enhancing listing descriptions, followed by automating replies to booking inquiries, followed by creating website content, and then lastly, increasing visibility. So this kind of makes sense. Listing descriptions, I would say, is one of the more straightforward use cases of AI, being able to come in and say, hey, can you make this text that I've made describing my listing more engaging or friendly, inviting, warm, professional, conversational, whatever way you want to tweak that wording is a really great way to go about it. And then I think seeing the least adoption in increasing visibility could likely be due to the fact that it's kind of ambiguous of what do we mean when we're saying increasing visibility? How can AI be used in that use case? So it's something we'll talk a little bit more later on in this presentation. But thank you everyone for participating in those polls. With those being done, we kind of have a little bit of an idea of the crowd that we have in the audience today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and kick it over to our first speaker. As I mentioned, Tom Williams from AirDNA. Tom, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Keegan. And yes, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thanks to Guesty for having me. As Keegan says, I'm going to go over some short-term rental trends that we've seen for the first half of the year. Look ahead to the end of the year and a little bit onto 2024 as well. So for those of you who don't know who AirDNA are, we are a short-term rental data provider. We provide data on markets all across the world. You can see on the left here, over 120,000 international markets, 12 million listings. We're doing this for over 8 years to create what we think is the biggest and the most robust data asset for short-term rentals. Just a bit on how we get that data. So you can see on the right here, over 30 million properties that we scrape from Airbnb and Vrbo directly. Partner data, so that's any kind of property manager or PMS or anything like that. We have a partnership with, we'll have visibility on those properties as well. And then finally, user contributed property. So any user that connects their listing to AirDNA will also have visibility on those properties as well. And they all kind of work in tandem together to improve overall accuracy, which is pretty high and gives what we think to be the best sort of resource for short-term rental analytics to help people along their short-term rental journey. So if you're not too familiar, I recommend after the webinar, going to airdna.co. You can plug in your market or anywhere you're interested in there, and you can kind of get an idea of what kind of revenues you could see, ADRs, occupancy, all the stuff that makes short-term rentals interesting. Perfect. So let's get started. And I wanted to quickly touch on this, kind of the elephant in the room to an extent. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen this. About a month or so ago, a YouTuber posted an analysis that they did of short-term rental markets, all these ones on the left, using data from a different data provider. And as you can see, well, they were analyzing RevPal, revenue per available listing, and the kind of drops that they've seen from, or differences they've seen from 22 to 23. And you can see they're fairly stark, 47% in Vrbo there. Our chief economist, Jamie Lane, saw this tweet and didn't quite agree with what he saw based on what our data was showing. So he did his own analysis for the same markets. And you can see based on our data, the drop isn't, or the change, I should say, sorry, isn't quite as dramatic as what was posted on that tweet. Now, we don't know how that analysis was done. We don't know how that competitor gets its data. We can only go off our own data, and we believe it to be the most accurate in the market. Airbnb also agreed that they didn't see the same kind of differences in terms of RevPal from year on year. So just wanted to address that off the bat, because I appreciate, it was a fairly hot topic for a while there. But let's move on and go to what we have seen in the short-term rental industry in the US. So we'll look at supply and demand trends, first of all. So looking at demand, first of all, the blue line at the top here, this represents 2023's performance, and you can see it's vastly outperformed all the years previously to 2019. 2019 is pretty much our baseline, what we go off usually, because obviously 2020 was a bit of an anomaly because of some sort of, I don't know, unknown illness that kind of shut the world down. So we go off 2019 to kind of give the best comparisons, and then how 2021 and 2022 have performed since then. As you can see, it's followed the same pattern of, more bookings coming in, or more demand, I should say, coming in towards the summer, and we expect it to kind of drop off as all the previous years have, going into the autumn and the winter. So that's great. Obviously, demand is up, but I hear you ask, what about supply, which is obviously also another very hot topic. So let's look at that next. On the left, you've got in the orange pre-COVID supply in the US, and then it turns blue during COVID and post. And this orange dotted line here, this represents the pre-COVID trend. So how we were anticipating supply to change up to this point. And you can see that we're still tracking way below that, even now. Obviously, there have been jumps. You can see sort of summer of 22 here and early 2023. There was a big jump in terms of the number of rentals coming onto the market. We are noticing, however, that the supply growth is slowing considerably, and we expect it to continue to do so going forward. So we think it's obviously down to a number of things, but the two main things are regulation and affordability. So regulation, obviously, a lot more governments and cities are clamping down on short-term rentals, making it harder to operate or even own a short-term rental in those locations. And the second, affordability. Obviously, house values are going through the roof, interest rates are going up, mortgage rates as well. So it's becoming harder and harder to actually see a short-term rental as a legitimate investment currently. So, less and less people are buying. So that supply is going to continue to slow, we think. So we don't think we've hit that kind of oversupply term just yet. So how is this affecting occupancy overall? So again, we've got the last 5 years, and you can kind of see here, the red line here represents 2021, how anomalous that was in terms of occupancy performance, vastly outperforming 2022, and, the other years not even getting close, really. The light blue here, this is 2023, and then the dotted line is where we've got that forecast for the rest of the year. So you can see it is tracking below 2022, and the purple line is 2024, so we expect that to kind of follow a similar track to what we've seen this year. I will say, though, it is outperforming 2019, which is this gray line here. So yeah, we are going to see a slow in occupancy growth, but it is still performing well. And the other thing to bear in mind, or what we're seeing, I should say, is a difference in sort of seasonality bookings. So we're not seeing as many seasonal bookings going forward. It's more across the year, more continuous bookings throughout, rather than, as you can see here, kind of like a big bump during the summer. So we expect over time this curve to kind of flatten or kind of have a more consistent arc, rather than just one big bump as we kind of go through the summer months. So that's the US. Let's see how Europe has been doing. So here we've got the top European countries in terms of STR performance, and how they're recovering, and what kind of stage of recovery they're in from 2019 and the pandemic. So 0%, that's our baseline, that's 2019. You can see on the left here, we've got demand lag. There's not enough demand compared to the number of listings. Demand return, we're seeing good booking demand coming in, but not as many listings. And then supply lag, not as much supply compared to demand. And then finally, occupancy decline on the right here, where there's a lot of supply available, but we're not seeing as many bookings come in, which has in turn caused a decrease in occupancy for those markets. So let's look at it in a bit more detail, and look at the demand lag capitals of those countries first of all. So we've got Amsterdam, Budapest, Copenhagen, Dublin, Prague, and Zagreb here, and we're looking at demand on the left. So again, 0% 2019, that's our baseline, and you can see all but Zagreb have not really even come close to sort of recovering to those 2019 figures. The reason for this, we think, is most of these cities and countries are very heavily reliant on international travel for their tourism. And when I say international, I'm not meaning sort of cross-border in Europe, but more international, like from the US and further afield. So being so reliant on those, with international travel being a bit more challenging post-COVID, a bit more expensive, less bookings are coming in because of that. And then if we look on the right in terms of the actual supply, that also hasn't recovered to what we saw in 2019. And I think on this side, it's far more down to what I mentioned earlier in terms of regulation and affordability. Regulation, especially in places like Amsterdam and Dublin, their local governments have brought in recently some pretty strict rules on short-term rentals, making it pretty difficult to own and operate a listing in those areas. So that's kind of why we're seeing a lag for these capital cities specifically. And then if we move on to countries that have sort of performed quite well post-COVID, we're looking at Italy, Portugal, and Spain here. And again, we've got demand on the left, and you can see around January 2022 or winter 2021, they actually outperformed those 2019 figures and pretty much continue to do so since in terms of demand. This can likely be attributed to easier cross-border travel in Europe, France into Spain, etc. It's a lot easier to do that in Western Europe. And then if we look over, conversely to what we saw on the previous slide, and then if we look over at the available listings on the right, you can see that actually hasn't recovered to what we saw in 2019. And again, this can probably be attributed to the same sort of stuff, affordability mainly, and then also regulation. I know in Spain, for sure, in places like Barcelona, you need a license for short-term rental, and they haven't given one of those licenses out in about 5 years. So it's pretty hard to get a new short-term rental on the market here. So this is causing increased rates. With a lack of supply and an increase in demand, that only means one thing, that hosts are putting their rates up to really capitalize on that, which leads us nicely into the supply surplus countries that we've got here, predominantly like Northern Europe, a bit of Eastern Europe as well, with Poland. But you can see here on the left, sort of post-COVID, demand really dropped. During COVID and post-COVID really dropped. And then to try and encourage travelers back, we've noticed a lot of hosts in these countries and markets really drop their rates to try and encourage more travelers back over to more like Northern Europe. So conversely to this, where hosts are increasing their rates because they can, these guys are really struggling for bookings, so they've had to decrease their rates. But you can still see on the right here, that there's still a huge surplus in the number of available listings. So it's likely to continue down this track for a while longer in these countries, until the sort of demand kind of levels out with the supply. Cool. And then looking forward in the US as to what's to come. So I already mentioned we expect to see less seasonal bookings across the board in the US, more consistent bookings throughout the year rather than just in the summer periods. We're also expecting to see, or are seeing, I should say, a change in how people are booking. So in terms of how far out from the travel dates they're booking. Year on year, we're seeing it's 10% down compared to the previous year. So people are booking on average 10% closer to the travel date than they were for the same time in 2022. So, if you're looking at your calendar and you haven't received a booking for a date that you had already in the previous year, I wouldn't panic just yet. I wouldn't start lowering those rates too quickly. It may be a case that, people are willing to book a bit later because, travel's a lot more accessible now, and people are more willing to travel kind of on a whim, if you like. So that's another kind of trend that we're seeing going forward. And then I like to call this the money slide. This is the one that everyone really gets excited about. So I think there's a lot of information here. Obviously, I think the things to really focus on are available listings, occupancy, and average daily rate and RevPAR. So let's look at available listings first at the top. So we've got year-on-year number of available listings. You can see pretty consistently it's gone up. And so 2022 and 2023, quite significant increases in the number of available listings. As I said, we expect this to continue, not necessarily significant in growth, but there is going to be growth continuing. But as I said, it is going to slow going forward. So whilst there are going to be more listings coming on, there's not going to be as many going forward as there has been in previous years. And then next thing to focus on is obviously the occupancy then. So you can see 2021, huge occupancy, nearly 63% across the board in the US, has dropped for 2022. What did drop is for 2022, I should say, and dropped again to 57.6 for 2023. And we do forecast it to drop again to just under 8% to 56.7 for 2024. Which, sounds bad, but I think what the good thing to focus on here is the ADR and the RevPAR. So if you look at the average daily rates, you can see year on year, again, consistent growth in terms of how much people are charging, and that's not going to change going forward. You can see $7 increase for 2023 and another $5 increase for 2024. So the rates are going to continue to go up, even though the occupancy is going to drop. So you may see less bookings coming in, marginally less bookings, but you are going to be able to charge a slightly higher daily rate. And then that's kind of reflected in the RevPAR as well. So you can see, fairly incremental changes from 2019 to 2020, and then a huge jump to 187 for 2021 and 2022. Does drop slightly by $2, but it is going to, we do predict it will stay flat at that 185 figure for 2024 as well. So overall, I think it's a fairly positive outlook for the rest of the year and for next year as well for the US. So let's just quickly touch on how Europe's looking. So we're just going to look at demand here. And we're actually tracking 16% higher in terms of demand for Europe compared to where we were at the same point last year. And these are just some of the cities that are seeing the highest demand going forward. And you can see here Warsaw and Krakow kind of leans into what we saw earlier with Poland. They have increased supply, so they're reducing their rates to try and encourage more people to book with them. And that, that kind of reflects in what we're seeing here. Same for Budapest and Bucharest too. Excuse me. And then just to summarize, I think the main takeaway here is it's not all doom and gloom. Demand is increasing, supply is increasing, but that growth is slowing. And as I say, there are going to be slightly different booking trends going forwards, shorter lead times and less seasonal bookings. And then just a bit on Europe, different countries are recovering at different rates, which is to be expected. But as of July this year, we're seeing, a 16% increase in booking demand compared to what we saw last year. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. It looks like we got a couple of quick questions from the crowd just about AirDNA specifically that I figure we can answer really quick before handing over to Dave. Do you have data for Canada? Do you have data as well for Luxembourg? Is the recommendation that these guests should just go to airdna.com?
Yeah, so yeah, just type in airdna.co and on the homepage there's a search bar. You can just plug in your city or town or whatever. We have worldwide coverage. The general rule of thumb is if the location has 10 short-term rentals or more, we'll have data on it and it will show. And even the really small ones, it's kind of hard to produce, relevant data that isn't all super skewed because there's only a few listings in the area. So yeah, any way you're curious about, please, go to airdna.co and just plug that into the search bar on the homepage there.
Nice. And then one last question. Someone was just clarifying, does the subscription to AirDNA allow customers to see market data by specific locations for investment opportunities and price setting?
Yes. So each subscription is location based. So if you wanted to look at multiple locations, you would have to subscribe to each one. You can also subscribe to states and entire countries. So if you're just focusing on, one state, for example, that would give you access to every market within that state. And then pricing, you can, we have pricing recommendations based on like market performance, how other listings in the market performed, and you can filter that to make it as relevant as possible to your listing. Alternatively, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually connect your listing to AirDNA, and then once you've done that, we can give more specific pricing recommendations based on like characteristics of your listing, where it is, number of bedrooms, etc., how you performed historically, that kind of thing.
Nice. But without further ado, Dave, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, guys. So good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are around the globe. And thank you, Tom, for sharing all this data. I actually really love data, so it makes the most out of everything. And I'm going to connect that sort of piece of using data later down when I'm speaking about it, but thank you for that, Tom, and thank you, Keegan, and the Guesty team for hosting us today. So let's dive in. So I really want to talk about, rise of AI, the era of machine, and all those apocalyptic sort of schemes we have going on today with the machines taking over. But I actually want to take it to a different kind of level and to talk about how we can leverage technology to increase ROI. Yes, ROI is my last name. You can see it here. It is my real last name. And I'm heading business development within Duve. Just a little bit about Duve in a moment, but I just want to start off with saying 192%. Okay, 192%. That is the numbers of average ROI, the customers of Duve that are using Duve, that utilize Duve's technology to create unique experience for the customers. That's what they're making, 192% ROI. So it doesn't matter if you're using Duve on that matter, but if you're not using technology to stand out or to leverage your business, this is the number that you're missing out on. So a little bit about the context of Duve. So Duve is the world's most advanced personalized guest experience platform. Every interaction the guests do with their hosts and vice versa goes through our platform: online check-in, guest app, communication center, upselling tools, entering or exiting properties through mobile keys or digital locks, and analytics using different data points and utilizing them to create more things. And these are some of our customers. We're actually started in the vacation rental sort of space and then transitioned also to growing to the hotel sphere, but we're also playing both sides of the game here. So I really want to burst a little bit of bubble. Okay, so AI, it's a big word, and we're always hearing about this and AI and ChatGPT and all that. But AI without the real AI, which is action items, is just a buzzword. Okay, if you're just saying you're using AI, or you say putting AI somewhere on your website or in your listings, or thinking to yourself that you're using AI, think again. If you're not utilizing and not creating action item from this artificial intelligence, then you're just using a buzzword. Use the tech, use the technology, and I'm not just going to talk about only AI, but use the tech to stand out. Every step of the guest journey needs to be actionable from this technology, and that creating you more value for your property. So I want to talk about something that's called hyper-personalization. What is exactly hyper-personalization? Here are 3 mega brands that I hope that everyone knows. If you haven't seen these brands on your phone or somewhere else, then you've been hiding under a rock or waiting in a bomb shelter for the machines to take over. But what kind of ties all these mega brands together is their ability to create a personalized experience for each and every of their user. So my Amazon page will not look like Keegan's Amazon page, and the same goes for Netflix. And I don't have TikTok on my phone, but I've seen it on different people's phone, and it looks different for everyone. So this is the era of hyper-personalization. If you're not using your technology or using different technologies such as AI or other platforms to create a hyper-personalized experience from the booking and onwards till the end of the stay and even further after, then you're missing out. Because this is what's relevant for us today. I don't want to go into Amazon and just browse, keep on browsing things that are not relevant for me today. I want things that are relevant for me, for my kids, or for my business, or from what I like to do. My hobbies is fishing, so I want to have things that are relevant for that. Same goes for other platforms. Now, when we talk about persona or personalization, okay, we could get mixed up a little bit about how to define personas. Okay, so how do you define your customer's persona? Okay, so here are 2 very similar personas. Actually, he's not a prince anymore, he's a king now, but they're both male, both born in 48, raised in the UK, married twice, live in a castle, and wealthy and famous. But obviously, there are different personas, right? Probably Ozzy Osbourne's more likely to stay in a luxurious flat in New York, rather than Prince Charles, more a diplomatic sort of way to accommodate him. So these are different personas, okay? If we only based our personas or knowing our customers on demographics, but not on the individuals concerned, then we're missing out. We need to understand each and every customer. What is their need? What's their desire? What's their passion? What's their buying journey? And how could we accommodate their specific needs? Okay, there's no more one size fits all. It's not existing anymore in our era of blast marketing and direct communication with our guests. Okay, so it's about information, it's about communication, it's actions and it's transaction. You need to personalize that for each and every guest, every time, every step of the journey, from the pre-stay to in-stay to post-stay. The more you use this personalization efforts, using technology to do those personalization efforts, the more you're able to get out of from your guests and from your listings. Okay, and when I mean that in actions, it means right content to the right guests in the right time and in the right medium or channel that the guest wants to talk about. Okay, so just a little bit about Duve. So Duve actually started out as managing more than 200 VRs in Israel and France. We actually started out as putting out tablets in different kind of vacation rentals, giving the guests all the information about the listing, about the area nearby, about different things they need to understand about turning on the AC, locking the door, or getting in and out of the lobby. And we placed these tablets across all the VRs, but we kind of missed out. We expected that everything will be great and money will fall from the sky, but something in the model wasn't working well. We didn't get the right content for the right type of guests, and it wasn't delivered in the right time and in the guest preferred medium. It was on the tablet. It was in the time that he wanted to pick up the tablet, and maybe the different guests today was a 20-year-old, and the next day will be a 60-year-old. We weren't getting the right message to the right people. Okay. Now, reminding you, content, guest, time, medium. These are the ones that will tie all together and create a personalized experience or a personalized journey for your guests. Okay. So how do we kind of stood out, or how could you stand out in your listings, in your properties, and find the ways that attract people before they stay, but also once they stayed, to talk about it, to create more buzz about it, and to really leverage your technology to do so. So know your customer. Okay. If your accommodation is more preferred for kids or families with kids, then understand who are your right customers. Don't market to the ones who are not relevant for you. Okay. And also use, as Keegan kind of mentioned before, use the AI or technology to create content that's very relevant for these kind of personas. Don't try to aim for personas that are not relevant for your property. Okay. Use the technology to create branding that's accurate for your guest persona. Okay. And that's already in the pre-stay stage. And then on this stage and onwards, I want to offer them things that are relevant for them. I want to offer them when they check in or before they check in, perhaps a babysitter, or perhaps give them the list of activities that are relevant for kids within this area. Okay. This is knowing your customer. Every step of the way, know your customer, engage with them. Obviously, this will be totally different if it's two lovebirds or a business trip, or it doesn't matter kind of the persona that's staying, but understanding what is your property catering. And it can cater, by the way, it can cater for various kind of personas, which is good. But when you work on your marketing, when you work on your branding, make sure you're getting the right content regarding the right persona to them. Make sure you're getting them in the right time before the stay, or right when they walk into your staying or to your property. For example, for the couple, I will offer probably a winery tour, or maybe a couples massage that I won't be able to offer the family with kids who are coming because they will be having their hands full. Okay. And by the way, if I'll be coming with my kids to a property and they will offer me things that are for couples, I'll be bugged out or bummed out that my kids are there and I can't be able to do things that are different. Okay. That will be bumming me out. On the contrary, if I have, for example, an open bar night, I want to make sure that I'm getting that information to the right people. That's leveraging technology, and not only AI, but technology to understand and enrich your guests' profile. And according to that, create action item, the real AI. Okay, that's a little bit of a pre-stay. What about pre-stay communication? Okay, direct communication with guests. Okay, we have a communication app that connects to the guests in every step of the way. But even if you're not using Duve, you're using other sort of communication, no matter how guests book their stay, communicate with them as early as possible. Okay, SMS, email, instant messaging, guest app, whatever the guest using, WeChat. Okay, if you're catering, for example, for Asian customers who are coming from East, and you're not using WeChat, then the communication will not be going to your guests. You'll be missing out on getting to your guests. Okay. In-stay, sentiment. Here comes a little bit of the artificial intelligence and not just the action items, but Smart Priority by Duve AI. That's just an example. We use AI to understand the guests' different messaging. Okay. And create sort of a priority of what we answer now. How can we communicate with the guests? What's more important, and how do we reduce different friction that the guests have using AI? Okay, using the ability to understand the guest sentiment. Is it very important right now to answer the guest who has a towel missing from a room, or more important to answer the guest who has a leak in his room? Okay, for example. But also the way to answer these guests using the AI, using canned responses or using messages that are relevant to each and every guest. That's part of knowing your customer during their stay. Okay. And post-stay, creating things that will create loyalty by personalizing their experience, and using technology or AI to leverage it further even after the stay will help promote for friends or for families or for them to come again and stay at your property. Okay. There's something here that I can't really mention because it's about to be launched next 2 weeks, but Duve Motion, I can give you a gist about it, that it's going to be a video, a personalized video for each and every guest with his information, his specification, and his preferences. And that will be sent out and communicated with the guest post-stay. Okay, that's just an example of Duve, but that could be relevant with other platforms or technologies, or using AI to do that for each and every guest. The less listings you have, you might be able to do it more, not automatically, but will be more directly to your knowing each one of your customers because you created this profile for them. So just to sum it up a little bit, using technology, this is numbers of using Duve's platform, but I'm just giving an example of using technology and creating action item format. Okay, you're able to increase your online checking, reducing your time, reducing your friction, allowing guests to do things themselves and like the process of doing it. You can increase your engagement. The guest app engagement, or the interaction with the property or the different things around the property, is tremendously important for the guest staying in the property, especially if I'm going to a place where I'm not familiar with. Okay. Upselling. I haven't even spoken about upselling. I didn't get into the conversation, but creating the right upselling for the right guests. You understand the guest more, you understand his profile, and you cater for that profile. You're able to create more revenue because you're using technology and understanding your guest and personalizing it. And obviously guest satisfaction increases, but that I think has to go without saying. So if I'm summing it up, 192%. That is the return on investment that you guys could obtain by using technology. AI, but AI with real AI, action items. Use the technology, use different listings, and use different platforms to know your guest, to enrich his profile, and to work upon that. So the only finite thing is the number of nights you can sell. Everything else is infinite. So thank you, guys. You can connect with me also through LinkedIn, or if you have any other questions, you can raise it up here or talk about Duve. Feel free to reach out.
Amazing. Thank you, Dave. Before we head into the panel discussion, I just wanted to share this promotion. We have a summer promotion going on right now for both Guesty for Pros and Guesty for Hosts, where you're able to get 30% off if you sign up today. You can scan the QR code on the screen for more details. We can go ahead and start our first question here. So, Tom, I want to start with you, since I think Dave is in the weeds here answering some Duve questions. In your experience, what are some common challenges that property managers face when it comes to building a strong online presence and kind of standing out in their market and being able to take these metrics that you're providing and action them effectively? How can technology help overcome challenges if someone's trying to kind of crack that code?
Yeah, good question. I think obviously SEO is super important, the title of your listing and how you kind of title it. But I think you also got to consider the images that you're putting out there and how are you positioning this listing? What are you kind of what are you trying to market it as? Is it a cozy one-bed apartment? Is it a three-family home? And are you highlighting any amenities in the in the title to kind of do that, to try and really bring it front and center, if you like, to those guests. So I think it's it's just a case of kind of really refining the listing itself, and then really refining that SEO and ensuring that you're hitting all those key points.
Nice. Dave, do you have anything to add there in terms of specific technology use cases to accomplish some of the things that Tom was iterating?
Yeah, I think, look, obviously I'm biased with Duve, but I think as long as you're using, as Tom really mentioned about the data points, if you learn about your data, you create more data points, you create more interaction with the guest or with prospects or with possible guests, the more you're able to enrich your data and understand it more, the more you're able to act upon it. And I think that's what makes the difference between having just a lot of data points, but actually making it feasible and actionable.
Cool. So what are some actionable strategies for hosts and PMCs to create this type of content that aligns with their brand tone, image, guest personas, et cetera?
Right. So once you know, like, you're starting to understand who are your guest personas, you might be missing out. You might be thinking that your property is actually really for business travel, but you're actually missing out on huge like families that are coming right down this kind of road, and you're missing out on it because you haven't understood that this is what's coming into your property. So once you understand that, you can create different kind of journeys for each of those kind of personas. Okay, for example, the Ozzy Osbourne versus King Charles. Okay, once you have the different kind of journeys, you need to market them or to use them in direct communication on their specific medium. So if I'm engaging with guests who are business travelers or on LinkedIn or perhaps on Instagram, that might not be relevant for Gen Zs who are traveling by themselves and they're looking for places based on TikTok or things like that. So understanding the personas, understanding your data, then using different channels for it, by the way, using, for example, ChatGPT or other ways to create branding efforts or content, that will help you to personalize and make it more open for more people to stay.
Yeah, I really like that approach of kind of saying we want to collect data, obviously, but the important step is analyzing that data to understand what is it actually telling you, and then actioning from there. Tom, that kind of naturally feeds into AirDNA as one of the titans of data in the industry, as it were. So could you tell the audience what are some key indicators and metrics that property managers and hosts should focus on when analyzing booking data? So what Dave's referring to of collecting this data, analyzing it, and then actioning, what are some indicators and metrics that they should be looking at?
Yeah, for sure. I think the obvious ones are kind of lead time and length of stay. So if you're trying to sort of analyze what type of guests you're getting. So, if you have a property in, I don't know, New York, for example, and you're getting bookings coming in for the weekend on like a Wednesday, it's like it's probably like people coming into the city just for the weekend, just to kind of sightsee and travel and party and stuff. Whereas, if you have the same apartment, but you're getting bookings from Monday to Friday on the Friday before, it's likely it's a business person coming in for the city just to do business. So you can kind of look at those strategies, those sort of data points, and think, okay, based on that, it's likely those two different types of people, and they're staying for different lengths of time, and they're booking it at different points during the week. And you can kind of use that to kind of create your own personas based on that. And then obviously, from sort of reviews and leaving anything in the rental itself, try and collect as much data from them, kind of get an idea of why they're staying, what they're looking to do. You can then kind of solidify that and back the data up and really hone those personas a bit further, if you like.
Nice. And then similar to what Dave was speaking about, that data can be utilized in all types of formats. That's whether that's Duve, whether that's directly in Guesty. It's a matter of understanding what are the tools at your disposal and how can you action that data. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. We got a question here from the crowd that I actually like and wanted to jump on because it's more of a where do you go for resources rather than, hey, what's your recommendation specifically? So Alex has written in saying, what would you say is the best way to learn to incorporate more AI into our business practices? Dave, you kind of talked a lot about AI. It's beyond just kind of like Googling and using YouTube. Do you have any resources that you found to be helpful in breaking down how to utilize AI in the short-term rental industry, in any industry at large, any type of resources like that?
Yeah, so we've connected actually AI or ChatGPT into our platform, and I showed you just a piece of it of using the AI to prioritize like guest messaging or information, but ChatGPT or anything that work with AI could help you to really cater your guests. I think you could actually the more you use AI to, besides the buzzword, to actually identify your things that are going well for you, things that are going less well for you, and then kind of leveraging on that. For example, if I have listings or upselling that are not going so well for me, or I'm not hitting the numbers right, maybe you could use these kind of AI systems to understand actually why they're not getting it using the different data. So for example, I could type into AI, it's ChatGPT, it doesn't really matter the platform, but I'm not really selling my early check-in option, and most of my guests are business travelers. Could you help me analyze that? And using that, you could actually try to answer that, and then don't leave it there, but make it actionable, okay? If you're getting some response, test it out, try it out, do like a study case if that works for you, or maybe you're hitting the wrong sort of upselling or types of going. So try to make it data rich, but actionable.
Nice. Tom, do you have any recommendations for resources for traveler data and demographics in parallel with AirDNA? Are there any recommended sources that you recommend people look at in kind of side by side, or just to validate further the data from AirDNA?
Yeah, sure. So there's a company called Arrivalist, and they actually track traveler data. So you can kind of, if you are trying to work out who's coming to your market and when, where they typically stay and for how long, that's a really good resource to utilize. I would kind of go with those guys. They're super. Their platform's super interesting. It's good. It's also kind of scary, I guess, how much information is kind of available. So they do it off cell phone signals mainly, and they kind of, again, their algorithm kind of analyzes whether something's like a commute or it's actually travel. So it's super interesting and well worth looking into.
Nice, awesome. So it looks like we're kind of coming to the end here. So I want to ask a little bit of a meatier question and give you each like 90 seconds to respond. Because I like to ask these questions in every webinar that I have, or at least every like 6 months or so. Because we're right here in July, in halfway through the year. So Tom or Dave, let's start with you since Tom just answered. Can you share with me, like, what is your view of how travel trends are changing from the first half of 2023 into the second half? What are some consumer behaviors that you've noticed shifting or persisting despite the changing economic environment?
Interesting question. I think we're seeing obviously the big changes since COVID is kind of behind us, but I think what we're seeing a trend is that people are trying out different places. People are not just going to their, regular kind of area or regular accommodation, but they're trying out new things. They're trying out Airbnb, they're trying out Guesty, they're trying out different kind of properties, using different booking engines and trying out things that are relevant for them. And I think we have the ability to capture or to understand that this is kind of a trend that's going on. People are trying out new things. They want to explore the world, especially after it was closed down for such a long time. So looking at the bigger spectrum of things, people are looking to explore beyond their cup of tea. So I can tell about myself, as COVID finished, I was hungry to grasp as much as I can from the world, going to Seychelles and Japan and the West. And so I think we're able to see trends that people are going everywhere and different places and new places. that's the biggest trends that we're seeing right now.
Cool. I'd seen some concerns. I forget where I even saw this on the internet, of people thinking that these kind of third tier destinations that became more popular during the pandemic because people were just looking for nearby areas that were more nature driven. There were concerns that those would not keep up as time goes on. But we've seen on our end, kind of very similar to what you were saying, Dave, that it's almost as if an extended palette of travel has been opened up as a result of the pandemic, and people realize that they don't need to go to a major travel destination to have an enjoyable experience. They can find a professional catered travel experience in a very remote area due to the growth of this industry overall.
Yeah.
Tom, same question to you.
Sorry, I'll add, technology is enabling these like third world countries, or these distant places to really be available for people. Really distant places that are just opening up because of the technology. So, yeah, absolutely.
Tom, how about you? What kind of trends are you seeing change halfway through the year here that maybe were a concern early on, or just anything that's kind of top of mind for you?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing that we are seeing is kind of, I guess both are a hangover from COVID to an extent. So similar to what Dave was saying, that, more people are kind of trying new things and going new places, but they're also coupling that with working at the same time. There's these kind of like weird hybrid work vacations where, they'll fly to a destination, make sure there's stable Wi-Fi first, obviously, and spend the first half of the week working, and the rest of the time as a vacation. So that's
I'm literally doing this next week. I'm going to Seattle for a month and taking some vacation time while I'm there.
Exactly. Like it's really kind of blurred the lines because of, more flexible working conditions and, hybrid working, that kind of thing. And the fact that, people wanted to go out and try new things. So I think it's really kind of coupled the two up together. And yeah, it's really kind of blurring the lines between what is a vacation and what is, I guess, just working remotely. But it's quite interesting to see how people are really pushing those two things together to try and maximize their time and their experience in a place.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have reached the end of our allotted time for the webinar. So I wanted to thank Tom and Dave again for taking the time to come speak on the panel today. And thank all of you that came in the crowd and asked your questions. And we'll see you at the next one.